So next I'm going to introduce Vito tonight. We will hear from him. He is originally from Sudbury, Ontario, graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce degree from Carleton University in 1978. He became a chartered accountant in 1980 and gained experience in audit and taxation with 2 large international accounting firms. In 1982, Vito transitioned into real estate. He started as a manager of a real estate brokerage over the years, and he established it as the #1 Century 21 office in Canada, maintaining this position for 20 consecutive years with 320 realtors. His leadership extended to becoming the president of the London and St. Thomas Real Estate Board in 2005, where he served as a board of director for 14 years. Alongside his real estate brokerage career spanning over now 40 years, Vito ventured into land development in the Lucan-Badolph area starting in 2009. During this time, he successfully developed over 400 single-family lots. Wow. Vito has also accumulated a diverse portfolio of residential, investment, and commercial properties over the years. Vito is going to delve in tonight into intricate factors contributing to the housing shortage and affordability crisis. He will address the challenges faced by builders and developers navigating through zoning regulations and bureaucratic obstacles that hinder timely and cost-effective housing development. His insights into the housing supply and demand dynamics, particularly in relation to the renters, will shed light on the specific challenges faced by those seeking affordable rental accommodations in our city. Please welcome Vito, everyone.
Thank you very much. It's a joy to be here. I want to talk to you about the housing industry, where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. And some of these are my thoughts, my opinions, but I'm speaking to you from the ground floor. I deal with realtors every day about buying, selling, renting homes, and so I understand what's happening currently and where we've been. Politicians, the media has been talking about a housing crisis, and the housing crisis that they talk about is a shortage of housing and an affordability issue. Let me be clear. The market today, there is no shortage of houses. No shortage of houses. We have lots of houses to sell. And builders are basically having a very difficult time selling homes. Let me give you some statistics, some facts, and then we'll talk about them. In basically 2000, from 2020 to April of 2022, 2 years I call the crazy time. The market was nuts. And just case in point, January 2021, we had 1 month of houses to sell. In other words, say our inventory was 700 houses on the market, we would sell 700 houses a month. So we had 1 month of inventory, assuming there's no additional listings. Currently, we have over 4 months of listings to sell. So that means if we, at the rate of houses that we sell today, if we were to sell them all, it would take us 4 months to do it. And that's not talking about new homes. So let's look at what happened to the housing prices. During that crazy time, from basically April 2020, just when the pandemic started, there was about 6 weeks where nothing was happening, and then all of a sudden, the market took off. Till about April of 2022, when the market basically stopped or slowed down. Sales in 2020, there were 9,967 sales. The average price of a home in 2020 was $467,501. Sales in 2021 went up 1,000 extra sales to 10,964 sales. The average house price went up 31.25% to $639,745, based on MLS statistics. And in 2022, actual sales dropped by 30%. But the average home price actually went up 13% to $724,583. In 2023, last year, house sales went down 12%. Average price of a home also dropped by 10% to $647,190. And in 2024, as of May, average price of a home slightly dropped 1%. So the average home price currently is $640,000. Keep that number in mind because I'll get back to that. So what about the new home market? The new home market was even crazier than the resale market. And crazier because speculators, did I lose it here? Speculators came into the market. In fact, because the market was so active, it took builders somewhere between 9 to 12 months to build a home. Well, speculators, predominantly outside of, and speculators mostly outside of London, predominantly Toronto, were buying new homes, holding them for the 9 months or so, and flipping them. In fact, more than 90% of all new homes during that period were purchased from outside buyers. People were flipping properties for somewhere between $100,000 to $300,000 more than what they paid for them. And they never closed that deal, they just flipped it to the new buyer. It was a crazy market, and that really drove the prices up. Of course, what was happening is developers began to think, well, they're selling lots, that they weren't getting enough money. So in 2019, house lots are sold by front footage. 2019, a builder would pay $5,000 roughly for a front foot, depending on where the location is, some a little less, some a little more. By 2022, it doubled in price to $10,000 a foot. Now you take a 40-foot lot, and that goes from $200,000 to $400,000. That's a lot of money for a builder to pay for a lot. So, of course, builders were doing well as well. They were building homes. They were selling them very quickly. And they had a decent profit built into their homes and were quite happy until they discovered that a lot of the people who were buying these lots, because it took 9 months to 12 months to get built, were flipping those houses to other buyers. So the market was crazy. And the problem is what happens with markets that have, significant demand is that it finally stops. And in virtually April of 2022, the market stopped. But here's the problem. Some of the builders who were selling lots had two problems. They sold it for what they thought was a great profit, but because there was such a large demand for housing, prices went up in lumber, brick, cement. Trades were asking significantly more money, and so their profit margins would be reduced. So what do developers and builders do when they see a market like that? They start to do different things. Developers wait. Instead of pre-selling the lots, they would invest and put in the services and try to sell the lots later. And builders also started building houses without selling them, waiting till they were closer to the closing date and trying to make more profit. What happens is they get caught. And when the market slows down, as it does now, then there are some problems. I read an article in the Globe today that from 1980 to 2022, 40 years, house prices went up 746%. Household income, by the way, went up less than half in terms of what they made in 1980 as compared to 2022. And I would suggest that most of those price increases, so that 746%, most of that happened 2018 and after. I would say maybe guesstimating around 400 to 450% of that 746. So what about buying a home? Right now, there's no shortage of homes. I have several realtors here that work in my office. They'd be very happy to sell you homes today, as many as you would like. Resale or residential or new homes. But buying a home is an affordability crisis. That's the problem we have right now. Let me give you an example. The average home price, as I said, currently is $640,000. The average household income is $100,000 currently, give or take. Many families are priced out of the market. Average home, $640,000. Average household income, $100,000. Someone who's the income of $100,000 does not qualify for someone buying a $640,000 home. In fact, you'd have to make $150,000 to qualify for the average home of $640,000. Your payments on purchasing a $640,000 home with a 5% down, which is the minimum down payment, which is $32,000, which you'd have to save, is over $4,000, $4,051. How about the average home that makes $100,000? They would only, and by the way, at $640,000, there's only 80 homes in all of London that are for sale at that price. And that is regardless of what area. For the $100,000 family, they could only afford $442,000. Their payments would be $3,343. There are only 27 homes available at that price range. So you can see where the problem lies. And one other point I want to make is the difference or the differential between owning a home and renting a home is quite significant. So $1,200 to $1,500 is the difference. To a family, that's a lot of money. And therefore, the rental market is very active. So let's talk about the rental market for a moment. The rental market for Ontario 2023, the vacancy rate is 1.7%. Rents have gone up dramatically since 2018. Let me give you an example. In 2018, I owned a number of townhouses on Wharncliffe, and the rent in 2018 for a 3-bedroom townhouse, 1.5 bathrooms, partly finished basement, no garage, was approximately $1,000, depending on the condition. Today, to rent that same condo, townhouse, is $2,500. That's a 150% increase. That's 25% per year. Just so you know, in Ontario, housing 2018 and prior are subject to rent control. Houses built after 2018 are not. If a house that is built in 2018 and before goes vacant, you're allowed to rent it at market rent, just so you know the facts. So, I believe, and how do we fix some of these problems? I believe that the less government intervention, the better. That's the problem. By the time the government tries to fix the problem, they make a bigger mess. Let me give you an example. Case in point. Recently, the Liberal government announced that they would give HST rebate in September 14 of 2023, not that long ago, to people building rental properties. So the total HST that a developer would pay would be rebated to them once they constructed the unit. In 2023, we did not have a housing shortage. We had resale homes listings were going up. Builders were basically sitting on their hands. So did we actually need that? Since the peak of the real estate market in Ontario, April 22, the average house price of resale homes have dropped 12%. I believe the percentage is significantly higher for those houses over $1 million. Inventory continues to grow, and I can see more softness in the market. Many mortgages are coming due in the next couple of years, so I think the inventory levels will also go up. What we gotta look for is a balanced market, and we're going to get there, but we gotta give it time, because builders will meet the demand. So will the developers. So how did we get prices to where they are? Well, the speculators in our market are gone. It's a different market. They're not in the market anymore. Immigration. We've had a number of people that have immigrated to London. We've grown as a population. That always affects housing. A lot of people, a lot of students who have come into who enroll in colleges. Some of them actually go to school, and some of them go to work, and they take up housing. Interest costs have gone up. Interest costs in 2020 around 2%. For a 5-year mortgage are now 5% or more. Cost of materials. Lumber costs have gone down, but brick costs have not. Cement has not. And a lot of that are fuel generated, which means carbon tax. Carbon tax has a significant impact on inflation. Land costs. Land costs have gone up to 10, as I said, in 2022, 10,000 a foot. Now they're starting to drop. Recently, development of phase one that I know of sold for $8,500 a foot is now down to $7,500 a foot for phase two. So we're starting to see some dropping in prices. Material costs hopefully will come down with the inflation rate. So real estate prices in a very hot market goes up very quickly. It's almost panic mode. Speculators get involved, and that also drives the market up. But prices come down very slowly. because people want the most in equity, and they have a hard time adjusting to a lower price. And even though inventories are going up, it's hard to explain to them that, look, either we price this at the right price, or you may be chasing this market. I'm very confident that we have a great economy, and what we need to find is balance. We need balance in our market, which is the right price, lower interest rates, and the right supply of inventory. I read an article in the Globe again today, and it's something I didn't know. Part of the immigration issue is that Canada, the US, Europe, I hear Japan, South Korea, are countries that do not produce enough children to replace the workers. In fact, Canada had 1.3 children per couple. And to continue with the same population, you'd need 2.1. So, but what I didn't know is that the article said that the people who own homes tend to have more children than people who rent. And so home ownership is a valued thing. Just a little tidbit of information, something I didn't know, but you learn something every day, I think. So what are some of the problems with demand and government? As a developer, one of my partners are here today. As a developer, getting things approved is very difficult. You have to go through a lot of hoops. Take, for example, urban growth boundaries. The way the municipalities determine what the size of an urban growth boundary is, they basically look at the last 5 years of sales. That doesn't necessarily reflect the current market. And let me tell you about urban growth boundaries. For example, in London, most of the land in the urban growth boundaries are owned by a small group of companies. I would say basically about 5. And so when you have and if you don't have your land in urban growth boundary, you can't develop it. So bottom line is, if you have a small group of people that have the development, have all the land to be developed, they control the development of the land. No, don't get me wrong. They want to sell houses, but they also want to get maximum value. And here's the problem. So whenever the urban growth boundary is determined, there are lands around it that are not included. And so those people who are not included have an opportunity to appeal. So it just takes so much longer to get property approved. And you got to go through hoops. Council says, well, you know, you're a big developer, and we would like, although this land isn't on this particular piece of land isn't on your property, we kind of need a bridge nearby, so we'd like you to contribute to that. Or, you know, we want a larger park. So you have to negotiate these things, and this takes time. The other problem that municipalities have is, for example, sewage capacity. If you don't have sewage capacity, you can't develop. You need infrastructure. Here's the problem. For a municipality to have the money to build the infrastructure, sewage, for example, they have to borrow it. And 2/3 of it they can borrow through the Ontario government, but the problem is the larger cities get priority, smaller municipalities second-class citizens, as it were. And the other one-third of it, they have to borrow from the banks. The problem is, they'll get their development fees when you sell the land, but you don't get the development fees until the lots can be sold. The lots can't be sold until the infrastructure and sewage capacity is there. So that is why federal governments are saying, look, we're going to provide the funding directly to the municipality so that we can get these infrastructures built. So it just takes an awful lot of time to get approval. You saw what Ford went through trying to create housing. So governments have to be coordinated. You know, where did the federal government decide that we're going to have 500,000 immigrants to our country? And what kind of impact, and in addition to that, an additional million of students and refugees, what kind of impact would that have in housing? Did anybody at the federal government determine that? Did they coordinate their decision with the Ontario government, in our case, or the municipalities? There is no coordination. You know, if you're going to have immigration, you should make sure you got housing for them. And if you don't, then you end up driving inflation because there's not enough housing at the time to handle the immigrants that you brought into the country. There's got to be coordination. That's straight planning. That hasn't happened. So, and what happens to immigration? You know, when we needed, people couldn't find people to work in restaurants. People couldn't find, the trades couldn't find people to work. Things have changed now, and we're seeing unemployment rate go from 5% to 6.5%. What happens when people can't find jobs? Where do they look to? Immigrants. They say the immigrants are taking our jobs. We need to reduce the number of immigrants. You've seen that. So it has to be coordinated. There should be a balance. If we can get a balanced market, then I think we're going to be in great shape. It's going to happen. It's going to happen just because I believe in the law of supply and demand. Prices will get adjusted. Developers now are helping builders sell their properties by making concessions. And they're making concessions because they want to sell those lots too. So I think we're going to get there. We're going through an adjustment period. I see 8 months to 12 months. I think we're going to be in good shape again, barring anything crazy happening south of the border. And I think we're going to get there. But in the meantime, I just wanted to give you a little rundown of what's happened and where I think we're going. Thank you for your time.